What up, space travelers? This is Andy Eversole. Welcome to the Eversole Show! This episode is brought to you by HypnoEarth. I've been a licensed hypnotherapist since 2012, and in that time I've helped thousands of people stop drinking, stop smoking, lose weight, enhance their sex lives, sleep better, become less stressed, make better goals, stretch their limits. All these things are possible when you tap into the power of your subconscious mind. So check out HypnoEarth.com and follow HypnoEarth on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And get on your journey. Live your life awake within the dream. www.hypnoearth.com. With that said, let's get into the show. Today we get to talk with one of the most fascinating people I've ever met, Mr. Christopher Everard. To me, he's like a combination between James Bond and Indiana Jones. I first came across him by his video series, The Illuminati, Secret Space, and I went all the way to France to study UFOs with him for a little while. Chris is a pleasure to talk to. He's an encyclopedia of knowledge about so many different subjects, and I hope you really enjoy this episode. This is really diving into the deep end early on in the podcast. So we start off with a sound check. I didn't know we were just going to go straight into the interview, so it just picks up hard driving right at the beginning. So hope you enjoyed this episode with Mr. Christopher Everard.
They will not appear in the Facebook search results.
Right.
A good example would be Jeremy Corbyn. He's got more than 500,000 members. But when you search for the Jeremy Corbyn groups, you only get little tiny weeny groups with like 800 people cropping up in the search results.
Mm-hmm, yeah, they're skewing the results really badly.
Yeah.
They did that with Hillary Clinton during the campaign as well.
Well, Google pushed her, didn't they?
Yeah,
very
hard.
hard.
And they buried her stories like the Clinton body count and stuff like that.
Exactly. But thankfully, we're here. We remember the Clinton body count. And where I've got, a big audience, basically, I think people got the wrong impression of what I was doing. I was supporting Trump and promoting Trump.
Yeah. Because
I realized that to have yet another Clinton in the White House would have basically turned the White House into a hereditary. It'd be like going back to the time of the Roman Empire, where the sons of the Caesars take over.
Right.
So I realized that what the mainstream media wanted is they wanted an election between Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton.
That's right.
And so what I started to do initially was campaign against the Bush family, mm-hmm. which I started very early on. I started my anti-Bush campaign in April 2015. I already had thousands of memes that I'd made for Facebook, about the Bush family. Right. So I started attacking Jeb Bush. And then I started supporting Bernie Sanders.
Right.
But, it became very clear very quickly that they stabbed Bernie Sanders in the back.
Yeah, they rigged that primary completely.
That's right. So when that happened, that was a bit of a kind of disaster because, he was filling up speedway tracks. He had huge crowds.
Yeah, and I was honestly surprised that he didn't do anything about that. I supported Bernie too, but
that's right.
Yeah, I lost a little respect.
You know what the saying is? Every man has his price.
Right.
So anyway, he did these big rallies. I was supporting him, but then they stabbed him in the back. And so then I switched my support to Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah.
They rigged the election. I have no doubts about the situation. Many of the voting machines were rigged, and this is all documented. There is not a single machine that was rigged that was flipping votes in favor of Trump.
Yeah, they were all going for Clinton.
They were all going for Clinton. Now, I have to say that there's a lot of people on Facebook saying Donald Trump is a member of the Illuminati and he's working for the New World Order agenda.
Right.
Well, I have to say that I don't believe that. Because he himself did not believe until very late on in the day that he was going to become the president.
Right.
And we got proof of that because at the last minute, he cancelled a $1 million contract where he would be presenting a television show. And he called up the network and he said, listen, I'm going to have to cancel this contract. And they said, well, why? He said, because I think I'm going to end up being the president.
Whoops.
And he wouldn't have the time to do it, you see.
Yeah.
And that happened very late in the campaign. So the New World Order plan was to have yet again a Bush versus Clinton election.
That's right. I agree with that.
Yeah. And the situation with Donald Trump is that it is almost impossible when you have somebody that's got $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion. It's almost impossible to actually bribe that person. It's a bit like Steve Jobs at Apple. He was his own man. He went about things his own way, ripping up the rule book on everything and designing whatever he wanted to design. What he thought was a good idea was put into production, and it was never questioned.
It was a dictatorship.
Yeah, that's because he built up several billion in the bank, and so he called the shots. They did try, and they did succeed for 10 years in taking Apple over. They had a load of snide plants put into the Apple management hierarchy.
Well, he got fired,
and he
too.
was thrown. Yeah, he was thrown out of the company, the same as they threw John Logie Baird, who invented television. They threw him out of his own company as well. Now, with Trump, I don't know whether he's got 8 billion or 6 billion or 3 billion or whatever it is, but whatever it is, it's a lot of money.
Sure.
There's two things I have to say about it. First of all, you don't become a billionaire without treading on some toes, and no one is whiter than white when they've got that kind of money.
Yeah.
But the second most important thing, of course, is that he cannot be bribed. There is a certain level to his personal wealth that he's reached. He has a jet. He's got helicopters. He owns entire buildings in lots of cities. How are they going to pay him off?
Yeah, he can say no to that.
Yeah, so what they've been doing instead...
I do have a question about that, though, for you.
Yeah, say again?
I have a question about his funding for you.
Oh, yeah, go on then, yeah.
Well, when I was the Las Vegas shooting, I started really studying that a lot and came across Mr. Adelson. You familiar with him?
I've heard the name. You'd have to refresh my memory.
So he's Donald Trump's main benefactor. I think he gave around $100 million to his campaign.
Adelson, what's his first name?
I can't remember his first name, but he's basically Zionist, Israeli.
Okay.
And he owns some papers there in Israel. And I don't know if you have seen a lot. David Icke points this out a lot about his connections with Israel. And I just found that I didn't even know that Adelson, who this guy was, but I found in researching Las Vegas that he was in charge of one of the companies that would be bringing in the new security machines as a result of Las Vegas. And I just found out about this guy, and he gave Donald Trump $100 million for his campaign, and I think Donald Trump spent about $250 million for the whole campaign. So that was a pretty big chunk of it. I just figuring what you thought of that.
Well, I'm new to this information. I'm just Googling this man. According to The Guardian, in 2016, in September, it says billionaire casino owner Sheldon Adelson plans to donate as much as $25 million to Donald Trump. It says here that the Las Vegas mogul will bring the total raised to $30 million. But even with the bigger check, Adelson's support for Trump amounts to much less than the $100 million that a few months ago he was reportedly looking to give to help his fellow billionaire. Well, he's a casino owner. My experience of people who are very, very wealthy is that they give money to all parties on all sides of the spectrum.
Right.
Politics is really a form of democracy. It's the best democracy money can buy.
That's true.
Yeah. So there you go. That's all I would say about that.
Yeah.
Is that I think Donald Trump said it cost him personally $100 million to run the campaign.
Right. What I found with Trump is that, like, those Israeli connections are a bit
well, he has
interesting.
Jewish members of his family.
Yeah. So just the how that story goes back. That's interesting.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would like to say something about that.
Yeah.
Is that Judaism created Christianity in a way, but even more than that, in 700 AD, the Jews of Medina actually took this young lad and sort of financed him, gave him support, gave him a public platform to speak, and that lad was Muhammad, the prophet. And so Judaism and the Jews of Medina and the Jews of Mecca actually created Islam. Now, when you compare Islam to Judaism, you can see that there is halal and kosher. These are ways of killing animals, and they basically are bloodbaths, and they choose the most painful, slow death for animals in both religions. The roots of Judaism is that the rabbi would be standing ankle deep in blood all day, because goats and sheep and all kinds of animals would be brought to the rabbi. He would be given a few shekels and he'd cut the throat of the animal, and the blood would be used to anoint the altar. Right. Okay. Yep. It was too messy to keep doing it every week in your own home. So the rabbis took a few shekels for doing it in the synagogue. Okay. Now, that tradition came from an earlier tradition, which is the Judeo-Babylonian tradition of actually killing human beings, especially babies and children.
Yeah.
So the Canaanites who are in the Bible were actually cannibals. They weren't only burning the babies, they were actually roasting the babies, and they were cannibals. Now let's put the time clock forward to 700 AD and the public square in Mecca. And there we have a load of Jewish guys who are basically, they're under a lot of pressure. And this pressure, political pressure, came from 700 years before then, when the Romans moved into the Middle East. And the Jews learned a lot from those Roman Caesars. See, the Roman Caesars had a system of control, which is where you get 50% of the working class to annihilate and murder the other 50% in society. And you create all of these civil wars. What you do is you create turmoil and chaos in any country that you eventually want to take over. And the Caesars had this plan, And roughly the plan was that to take control of a country covertly would take 50 years of civil war and civil unrest, and then a further 50 years to make sure their sons and their daughters married into the existing monarchy of that country.
Yeah.
And then they would use belladonna, thornapple, datura, and murder by poisoning all of the original monarchs. And that's the story of history for the Roman Empire, for the Borgias. They basically either poisoned them or they stabbed and slashed their way into power, blaming the assassinations on patsies like Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
So the Jews realized that once the Roman Empire moved into the Middle East, you know, they took over Palestine, they were taking over everything, Egypt, you name it. And so the Jews really learned a lot from those Caesars. And so they thought, right, well, we're going to have a spin-off. There's always been this deeply held hatred of the poor by the elite. And by golly, the rabbis were the elite in that geopolitical area. So they created Islam. And Islam was created to be so similar to Judaism that it would be very easy to recruit Jews, pat them on the head and say, you're a Muslim, you're a Muslim, you're a Muslim, which is how you become a Muslim. And they streamlined the situation so that you wouldn't even have a picture of Muhammad. Yeah.
Right.
There's not even a picture of Muhammad. There's not even paintings of Muhammad. There's no Virgin Mary. It's completely streamlined. It's like a new plastic injection molded version of Judaism. But its roots are exactly the same.
Right.
Prayers on a Friday, blood ritual. See, people don't realize that Islam is a bloodbath religion, the same as Judaism. Their festival is called the Festival of Eid. And in my new TV series called Heritage, you actually see the streets in Muslim towns knee deep in blood. The streets are running in rivers of blood, where these Muslims are slaughtering thousands of animals, far more animals than you could ever even eat.
Wow.
Easily in a day.
I've never seen that.
And considering they've got no refrigeration, you can tell that it's just, you know, this is ritual slaughter. Now, we come to ISIS. ISIS was always there in the wings, and it really got kicked off and funded by MI6 and Mossad and the CIA.
Right.
When there was a democracy movement spreading from Tunisia, North Africa, right the way across the Arabian world. Everything that you see in Arabia, everything that you see in the Middle East has been created by Buckingham Palace. They own the land through two documents, which you can see in the British Museum. One is called the Mandate of Mesopotamia. That handed over to Buckingham Palace the whole of Iraq, the whole of Iran. The other is called the Mandate of Palestine. Jordan, Syria, Palestine, Israel, even parts of the Sinai Desert, and remember Egypt was British right up until 1953, all of that is owned by Buckingham Palace. It's never been handed back. And all of these sheikhs, the wealth that you see with their diamond-encrusted speedometers on their Lamborghinis and their amazing Bentleys that have wheels made from solid gold, that wealth that you see, the spectacular wealth of where, you know, they're paying the Kardashians to be go-go dancers at the Ritz in Paris every night, that amazing wealth is from 1% royalty, which the sheikhs get for the oil which is sucked out of their countries. 99% of the wealth is actually soaked up by British Petroleum and a company owned half by the British Queen and half by the Netherlands royal family, and that's called Royal Dutch Shell.
Wow. 99%.
Yeah. They get 99% of all of the wealth out of the Middle East's mineral reserves.
And the rest of the people there get 0%.
Well, the sheikhs, if you're a member of a sheikh's family, you'll get a new Mercedes on your birthday, and you get to live in one of these new designer desert villas. But yeah, for the working class people in Arabia, they are downtrodden and their lives are destroyed by Islam. Islam is the great destroyer. Islam is the great weapon which the elite have been using to suppress billions of people in 44 countries on planet Earth. All of those sheikhs, all of those imams, all those Sufi people, including all of the extremists, hook-handed Hamza, even this guy that is the supreme leader of Iran, they are all MI6 agents. Rouhani, for example, who is the supreme leader of Iran, was educated at Glasgow Polytechnic in Scotland. I'm sure he had a very, very pure fundamentalist time in Scotland.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Hook-handed Hamza, he was married to a Roman Catholic woman, and he was a bouncer at a strip club in Soho. So he was hardly a fundamentalist Muslim preacher. Every single sheikh, every single prince of Oman, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, they've all been educated at Eton, Rugby, and at British schools. The government of Turkey, the most highest Muslim leaders in Turkey, are members of what's known as the Donma. And the Donma are actually from the history of the Jews in Turkey. They come from a cult that was formed by a Jewish guy called Leibovich. And then they declared themselves to be Muslims, but in reality, they are actually Jews.
Right.
And now they've turned Turkey into a dictatorship. And that's what Islam is. Islam is a federation of dictatorships. There is no democracy because the elite don't want democracy.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
That's crazy how they just cross-pollinate all through history like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as you know, time goes by very fast.
Yeah, it does.
A year goes by very, very fast, and time has speeded up as well. In the last, say, 15 years, we've got this weird phenomenon where a year is lasting about the same length as 9 months used to 10 years ago.
Wow.
Do you get that feeling?
I mean, there's a sense of that, but I haven't really, is that just a feel, or is that a mathematical equation?
I would say that because time is subjective, time is a subjective astronomical kind of phenomenon. I would say that it's really speeded up.
And it seems like as you get older, that time moves faster too.
Yeah, I would say that
perspective.
Yeah, as each year goes by, it goes by faster than the previous year.
And and of course, like Osama Bin Laden has CIA history as well.
Well, Osama Bin Laden had a code name. His name was Tim Osman. And his father was very wealthy because his father had actually constructed, as a Pentagon contractor, many of the military bases. Bin Laden Construction was a Pentagon contractor. Now, Osama Bin Laden, the official story, is that these Navy SEALs found him, executed him, and disposed of the body at sea.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, these Navy SEALs were judge, jury, and executioner all in one hit.
Right.
Which left the families of the victims of 9/11 without the pleasure of seeing Bin Laden in court. Now, during the trial of Saddam Hussein, they knocked on his cell door one night. He was wearing his underpants. They said, come with us, and they hung him in a stairwell.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you'll see very, very careful media management by the BBC, CBS, NBC, ABC, CBC. They will not play a single second of a single minute of Saddam Hussein reading out his statement in court with English subtitles, because Saddam Hussein was also an operative for the British government.
Right.
And so with Bin Laden, they realized that they'd made a big mistake by having Saddam Hussein even have a court case. And so what they did is they got the Navy SEALs to execute and get rid of the body, and then they killed all of those Navy SEALs.
Really?
Did you know that the Navy SEALs that disposed of Bin Laden's body were later all killed in a helicopter crash?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a bit like Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
Yeah.
Kill the evidence.
And then, see, Jack Ruby, his real name is Rubenstein, and a lot of people know that Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald, but then they don't realize that Jack Rubenstein was also himself killed.
Right.
And this is called sanitization of the trail.
Mm-hmm.
It's an espionage technique.
Yeah. That's how you take care of business there, I guess.
That's et tu, Brutus. I mean,
yeah.
The whole of history is a conspiracy.
They can't afford people talking.
That's right. Abraham Lincoln, he was executed. JFK, he was executed. These are all conspiracies. They say conspiracy theories, it's all nonsense. There is no such thing as a conspiracy.
Of course.
Julius Caesar, he was assassinated. Reagan, there was an attempted assassination on Reagan.
Yeah.
If that had been successful, then we would have had George Bush Sr. as the president much earlier than what we had.
Well, he was essentially the president then, from history, from what I know.
That's right.
Wow.
So it's one assassination after another after another.
What do you make of this the Trump situation with like the way people have been just openly calling for his assassination?
Yes, well, they are the libtard occultists, the witches, the women who dress up in pink foam vaginas. I like the way they walk down to Times Square dressed in pink foam vaginas, saying they want the right to kill unborn babies and do what they want with their bodies. But they don't say a word about millions of Muslim women who are told to wear a black bedsheet over their heads for all of their lives. They're not allowed to go out shopping. And the fun time, in an Islamic household is snipping the clitorises off of little girls.
Yeah.
Now, this is going on all over the Muslim world. It's called female genital mutilation.
That's right.
It's female circumcision. Mm-hmm. It's a Muslim phenomenon. And one girl reports at a British hospital with a bleeding or infected vagina every 96 minutes. This is happening all over Europe. Mm-hmm. There's been 170,000 girls in Britain having their genitals mutilated as part of this Islamic kind of Saturday night kind of fun time where they get them up on a kitchen table and rummage through the drawers for a rusty pair of tweezers. And I know that sounds disgusting, but I'm afraid the libtards are really going to have to wake up. The big awakening for everyone comes down to Lawrence of Arabia, okay? Watch the movie, read up on Lawrence of Arabia. You will see that he is the agent of Buckingham Palace who goes in there and tricks the Muslims. And this entire thing about Islam being a religion of world peace is a scam that's been going on for a very long time. Our enemies, I'm speaking as somebody that supports freedom and democracy, our enemy and our enemies are primarily the Hebrew ancient black nobility elite, and their stormtroopers are the Muslims. And you can see that they've been fracturing all of the ancient nations of Europe. They've been fracturing Canada. They've been fracturing the United States of America. In Britain, which is a very tiny little island, they've been deliberately importing Muslims, the equivalent of the entire population of the city of Liverpool every 12 months. Mm-hmm. Who are these people? Well, we know who they are, because the Manchester Arena bomb that killed more than 20 people and injured another 150 people was planted by Salman Abedi, and the Abedi family were running the militias in Libya. They were even known as the Manchester Militia. And he was flying in and out of British airports right up until the day that he actually went into Manchester Arena. Mm-hmm. There was a woman, a Muslim woman, going up to people saying, "You're all going to die. You're all going to die."
At the Manchester event.
Yeah, that's happened at several of these bombings where there's been somebody
Las Vegas
forewarning
too.
them. Yeah. So this is all planned. All of these people are all funded. I'm talking about the suicide bombers.
So these people coming in and out of Britain are allowed passage by the government, the British government.
Oh, they're very valuable. Yeah. I mean, a lot of them have been trained up and they've been brainwashed. I mean, Islam is a fantastic brainwashing machine. But then they've been brainwashed that extra degree with the old MK Ultra MI6, suicide bombing kind of brain matrix. Mm-hmm. And these people are, sometimes they're an asset to the intelligence community since birth, like Salman Abedi. His father was a militiaman. His brother is probably going to blow somebody up as well. Mm-hmm. His brother has been posing on Instagram with machine guns. Mark Zuckerberg never did anything about his Facebook account, but if you've got a picture on Facebook of a woman breastfeeding a baby, you can't have that.
Right.
Okay, this is the world that's been created by the Hebrew aristocratic European elite. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the Habsburgs, the Schleswig-Holsteins, the Saxe-Gothas, the Saxe-Coburgs, the monarchs of most of the European royal thrones in Europe have been infiltrated by the loan sharkers that go way back, even, they go back to the 1100s and the 10th century. Mm-hmm. They've married their children into the monarchy. They've married their children into the aristocracy.
Which of those, they all connect into U.S. presidents as well, all of those same families?
Yeah, most of the U.S. presidents can be traced back to Richard and his brother, King John.
Right.
If you watch the Disney cartoons about Richard the Lionheart, he goes off to Israel in the Crusades. Richard the Lionheart is the big hero. He's got the white tunic over his armor with the red lion, and he's got his big sword, and he's the brave bloke who goes over to kill the Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother stays at home and he embezzles millions of pounds in gold coins, and he chops off the heads of people and he orders kids to be killed. He's the baddie. Well, all of the US presidents are related to that King John, the baddie.
Right. Except for maybe, is Donald Trump related to them?
I don't know. I've not seen any genealogical thing with Donald Trump. I mean, I would imagine that somebody would have traced it by now. His mum is Scottish.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's going to have any royal connections, he's more than likely going to be a member of the real royal family of Scotland.
Yeah. Like the Scottish rite of Freemasonry. Or I haven't heard anything of him being a Freemason or anything like that.
No. I have to tell you that Freemasonry is the gentleman's version of the Kabbalah.
Okay.
And the Kabbalah is the gentleman's version of Judeo-Babylonian Satanism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Freemasonry is, very diluted and watered down version of Luciferian worship.
Right. What is, I wanted to ask you about that. What is the difference between what is called Satan and what is referred to as Lucifer?
Well, you could sit here for an hour or a whole day discussing that type of thing. The thing to do is to really judge these cults and these secret societies on what they do rather than what they say.
Right.
So a good example would be General Albert Pike.
Mm-hmm.
He said in a letter sent to the 32nd degree and 33rd degree Masons in the USA that the one true superior God is Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at who was General Albert Pike. Well, his sort of Saturday night kind of kick that he used to really love is grabbing a black person from a local village and hanging them up by their skin from the branch of a tree. And this became a craze called the Ku Klux Klan.
So he was a founding member of the Ku Klux?
Yeah, he was a very, very influential Klansman.
Mm-hmm.
He was an Imperial Grand Wizard Dragon, or whatever they call themselves.
Yeah, right.
And where did that come from? Where did the white pointy hats come from? Well, that's how the Roman Catholic Church dressed when they were putting people on trial.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he's a Luciferian. Judge him by his actions.
Yeah. Okay. So this,
go on.
This part gets really interesting for me. So this is sort of because of the way I found out about this, a lot of this stuff, and actually found out about you researching this was by reading a lot of David Icke's books.
Yeah.
And this is where the extraterrestrial influence kind of comes in and combines with Luciferian or Satanism on this planet. How does that happen? How does that mesh with UFOs and the extraterrestrial presence here?
Okay, well, I'm sure you've all seen satellite photographs of the Earth in space. We do not know what the actual size of the universe is. We have mapped many constellations and galaxies, and that's an ongoing kind of research project that's going on at the moment at the European Space Agency and also at the Goddard Space Research Facility. Those people are called astrocartographers. They are making a map of the universe, a map of stars. Mm-hmm. We have no idea right now in the 21st century whether the universe is infinite or whether there is this bow wave, if you like, the end of the expansion of the universe, and beyond that there is literally just a vacuum. Mm-hmm. Even though we don't know that finite piece of vital information, what we have so far mapped is so mind-bogglingly big, that, it takes about a week of astronomy classes to get your head around these distances.
Right.
For example, the Milky Way galaxy is not a remarkable galaxy. Our galaxy is pretty kind of average, if not a bit on the small side. So we have 100 billion stars in our galaxy. And we have mapped and can safely identify 100 million galaxies. Now, if you were to travel at the speed of light, it would still take you about 12,500 years to travel from one side of the Milky Way to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, you would still need extra years because you've got these spiral arms. And if you wanted to explore every single spiral arm looking for a planet like ours, you're probably looking at 25 to 35 years of traveling at the speed of light just to explore each of the spiral arms. Now, let's just say we are the only intelligent beings in this giant universe. That's an awful waste of space, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, that's really hard to believe that that's the case. A lot of the people that argue against like the presence of UFOs here on the planet is that vast space and the physics of traveling that. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think it is a barrier. I don't think it is a barrier for people that have got advanced technology.
Right.
It's been about 88 years between the time when the horse and cart was the most common mode of travel
mm-hmm.
to the launch of the first space shuttle.
Mm-hmm.
That was 88 years.
Yeah.
In that 88-year period, we had Henry Ford, mass production of cars. The early cars were electric, then they were running on alcohol, then they were running on petrol and diesel. And we've had a lot of advances in technology in that 88 years. We've gone from wind-up gramophones to iPods. Now we have the cloud,
mm-hmm.
where you don't even need a physical device any longer. And that's all in that space of 88 years. If you really look at what's going on in the world today with technology, and you turn the clock back even 50 years, let alone 88 years, you can see that there's been a massive technological revolution.
Right.
What's happening now is that the new advances in technology are only going to be for the elite. And we are going into what I call the Blade Runner era, where you've got these mega corporation owners with billions and trillions of dollars, like the Tyrell Corporation, which would be Mark Zuckerberg and the Google bosses, at the tops of these giant skyscrapers. You never see them, or they are out on desert Caribbean islands and tax havens.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the ground feeding society, who are being already told that we've got to expect to eat insects as a form of protein, mm-hmm. and maggots, and all of the meat is going to be 3D printed, and that stem cells of our own babies are in Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and there's human DNA and rat DNA in our fast food burgers.
Nice.
So what you see in Blade Runner is already here.
Yeah.
And that's the future. If we don't make a big effort, and every hour of every day, never, ever take your eye off the tiger, always fight, always campaign, always educate, always make an effort. If you don't do that, then that Blade Runner situation is going to be more magnified as each day goes by.
Mm-hmm. So it's up to us in how it's created. It's already on the way. It's the whole plan.
Yeah, so now that brings me on to the subject of aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to be negotiating with aliens when they land? Who is going to take the decision to either attack them as they come into our atmosphere or send up a greeting party and have a meeting with them on the dark side of the moon? Who is that going to be? It's obviously going to be the Judeo-Babylonian Hebrew aristocratic royal elite. It's obviously going to be them, because no member of the public has enough money to actually build a lunar landing space shuttle. Mm-hmm. Even Sir Richard Branson and Elon Musk have not yet managed to design a reusable lunar landing shuttle. They're pretty close to it. They will eventually do that. But unless you've got that kind of technology, the kind of technology that you see British Aerospace and Lockheed Martin and NASA have, you're not going to be able to intercept these aliens and either negotiate with them or blow them out of the sky.
Haven't they already landed?
Yes.
So yeah. How is that cooperation happening right now, do you think?
I don't think there has been much cooperation.
Really?
What I believe at the moment is that the most significant contacts which we've had happened a very long time ago. You look at all of these kings and queens of the ancient world, mm-hmm. and it's very obvious that they did not look like ordinary humans.
Right.
A good example would be Akhenaten. Another example would be Tutankhamun, is his son. Mm-hmm. Another good example would be the kings and lords of Paracas in Peru. Also the Neanderthals of Heidelberg in Germany. The Neanderthals down on the Franco-Spanish border. They also had these elongated skulls. We found ancient skeletons that are very tall. In the 1970s, there was a double lead-lined casket found in the River Thames with a skeleton that was 7 feet 7 inches, and that dated back 2,000 years. Wow. So we know that there's obviously been some genetic manipulation going on. Mm-hmm. And as I say, the most significant contact which we had with these, if you want to call them star gods, happened, I think, back in the pre-Neolithic era. And then before then, there was obviously some kind of genetic intervention that happened in the Neanderthal era. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we had a situation where one day there was just Neanderthals sleeping under bearskins at the backs of caves. And the next day, there was modern humans walking around at the same time as Neanderthals. Mm-hmm. And I think that, this contact with these star gods is probably at the root of some of the most ancient and most secretive cults. Certainly the Mayans, they weren't studying astronomy to the level that they were doing it just for their health or just out of curiosity. The same thing goes for all of the megalithic site builders. They were mapping the movement of the planets mapping the movement of the moon and especially mapping the movement of the sun, because they realized that something very important had happened for them in the not too distant past, where there had been a massive advancement and acceleration in human technology. There'd been an advancement in mathematics, in weaving, in the invention of the wheel, in stone. For example, 2,000 years ago, the Romans were making concrete so well that it was setting underwater. And we now know, of course, and there's a whole TV show out of the Forbidden TV series that I produced last year. There's a whole episode dedicated to how a lot of the most famous statues in Egypt are made out of concrete. Mm-hmm. Even those blocks of stone aren't stone in many of those monuments. They are actually concrete.
Right.
So there was huge advances in technology that came from nowhere. It's like a Cambrian explosion of ingenuity. Mm-hmm. And that coincides with the archaeological evidence that shows all of these elongated skulls. Now, a lot of these ancient people did squeeze and bind and bandage their babies' heads. There's no two ways about it. They did do that. But they were doing it to mimic the look of these star gods. Mm. But it's not all down to bandages, because we know from a book that was published in 1873 called Peruvian Antiquities that there is a sketch of a mummified Peruvian mother who has a mummified fetus in her womb. And this sketch from the 1870s shows that the fetus has this enormous H.R. Geiger, Ridley Scott style elongated skull. Even before it's born, it's got that skull.
Wow.
So we know that there's definitely been genetic manipulation.
Right.
I believe it's been done by visitors. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's your kind of perspective, is that we had contact in the ancient world, and they've kind of just been keeping an eye on us since then. Because I was watching your secret space movie last night.
Yeah.
And that video of where the UFO appears in the lower atmosphere, and then that laser shoots up and tries to shoot it, and it flies off. That's such an amazing piece of footage.
Yeah, that space shuttle footage is from STS-48. Mm-hmm. That space shuttle mission, STS-48. Now, there was lots of other pieces of UFO footage filmed by the astronauts on special cameras on board the space shuttle on that mission. They were using cameras that were not using videotape. They were actually recording the images, even back then, frame by frame digitally, and then sending the clips not in real time, but almost in real time, down to mission control on a scrambled and encrypted channel, which you can hear the astronauts talking about, which is called the S channel.
Right.
That's S as in secret channel. Now, what I've done to the STS-48 footage is it's now available on the Enigma channel in 1080. So what I've done is I've blown it up pixel by pixel very carefully, so you can now watch it on HD. And I can tell you now, the STS-48 footage watched at different speeds on a 55-inch HD TV is spectacular. Mm-hmm. Now, there's lots and lots of other pieces of UFO footage taken by space shuttle astronauts. 99% of all of that footage, for me, proves that there is a probe situation going on. We're sending out probes like Voyager, Pioneer. They've even left our own solar system, and we're sending probes everywhere. We're sending probes to now investigate the 2 moons of Mars. We're sending probes to go and sit out near Venus, and they're looking at the sun. We're sending probes to Neptune. There's even a probe that's going to go out to Pluto. Well, if we're sending probes, it's very obvious and very logical that many of these star gods would also be using probes as well. And there's plenty of footage. You can see this on the Enigma channel of people just going about their day. You know, they're just picking up their kids from school, or they go out shopping. They look up in the sky, and what they're seeing is these jelly snakes high up in the atmosphere, breaking up or spitting out small spherical objects. And I don't believe that there's any living aliens on those objects. What they are probes. They're being dropped into the atmosphere. They're then spreading out, and the naughty ones are making crop circles.
Right. So those are what you refer to as space serpents.
Yeah, we used to think that
it was like a biological creature.
Yeah, we used to think they were biological creatures until we managed to get more and more footage.
Right.
And now we can see that these are actually some kind of membrane that contains multiples of these probe objects.
Wow.
Yeah, on the Enigma channel, you can see exactly the same probes just floating at waist height in the Atacama Desert. And then right then next to it in our Secret Space TV series, you can see the exact same probes on the lunar surface that have been photographed by amateur astronomers in Japan.
Right.
They're everywhere.
Wow, that's crazy.
They've saturated the universe with these probes. Which is what we're doing. We've saturated our own solar system with probes.
Absolutely.
And in 140 years from now, Pioneer will eventually get to another star system.
Wow, that's fascinating. There's so much stuff going on out in space and just in our atmosphere. It's incredible.
Absolutely, yeah. And remember, of course, there's been a secret space program running. It was really started by the Schleswig-Holstein, Sondersburg kind of scientific SS elite. These are the Germans, and
right.
They hollowed out an entire mountain, rather like a James Bond movie, and they built the world's first space station at a place called Nordhausen. And, they developed rockets and all kinds of things. And they've been studying the activities of these UFOs for a long time. Because you can see in my documentaries UFO photographs from the Nazi era.
Right.
But we've been dealing with this UFO phenomenon for a very, very long time.
And those are also
paintings.
Those are also the founders of NASA, correct? The Nazi rocket scientists.
Yes, that's right.
A lot of people in America don't know the connection between the Nazi scientists and NASA. They have no clue.
I know. Well, I am glad to say that I think there's something like 700 million people have watched my secret space films on YouTube.
Yeah.
But my videos, my films on YouTube were always deliberately downgraded and very wishy-washy. So you couldn't really get you couldn't get it until you actually saw one of my films directly on your own TV. But, people are waking up to this. Herman Oberth, who was the boss of Werner von Braun, Herman Oberth was his boss and his kind of mentor. There is a famous quote from Herman Oberth saying, "We have been assisted by people from the stars in the development of our technologies." Then there's a very famous letter written by Robert Oppenheimer, who was in charge of the Manhattan Project atomic bomb development program.
Right.
And he wrote a letter that was signed by Einstein. And they wrote this letter and sent it to the White House, to the president. And they describe the aliens in this letter, and they call them the celestial intelligences. So it's all there in black and white. It's all very clean cut. People just need to be told where to look.
Yeah, and I find this dichotomy fascinating that, social media, Facebook, YouTube are all so censored, yet that has been the vehicle for all this information to get out to such a widespread audience. It's like
we're in the golden... we're in the golden era of social media at the moment.
Right.
It's not going to stay the same.
Yeah, it's going to get more centralized.
It's going to become more like Blade Runner, and it's going to become more like George Orwell's 1984.
Right.
I have to say that Wikipedia and Facebook and Google, they're all funded by the same people called Sequoia Capital in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
They all got their seed funding from this same source, which means that that same source owns big chunks of the top 10 internet companies.
Yeah.
So we are not going to see the kind of fluidity of communication that we've enjoyed for much longer.
Right.
You can already see that on Facebook there's a massive crackdown.
Oh yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I've been warning people about YouTube and warning people about, the violations of our freedom of expression. I mean, I'm sure I must have even mentioned it when we first met.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you've been deleted several times from Facebook, right?
Oh, many times, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Just like one post will get you deleted for extended periods of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's happened. I mean, I've had entire channels deleted off of YouTube.
Right.
Which is a badge I wear with honor.
Well, I understand that. Well, look, I could talk to you all day, Chris. Like you're definitely one of the most fascinating people I know. I respect what you do immensely. So, but I just really want to be respectful of your time as well. So I don't want to keep you too long.
Why don't you come on as a co-host on my show, maybe every other week or something?
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Now, for your time zone, I think it happens about lunchtime on Sundays for you.
Okay.
My show is 8 p.m. London GMT on Sunday evenings.
All right.
I think it's about lunchtime, isn't it, for you? That?
I know Paris is. I think it's about 6 hours.
Okay, so it's about two in the afternoon for you.
Yeah, it's right two right now here.
Ah, okay.
East Coast, New York time.
Right, so my show would start at 3 p.m. your time.
Okay.
On a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And we discuss a lot of stuff, and if you want to reach a big audience, then basically that's what you do. About a year to 18 months of doing shows on TFR, but many people will know you.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I mean, this has been my subject of research for the last 20 years, so I'm just now starting to open up and talk about it a little bit, and it's just...
Okay, well that's great, and bring your banjo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you written any songs about space and intelligent aliens in space?
Yeah, I've done a few projects on that. I don't know if you know the HypnoEarth project. Well, you did know the China one I went to.
Yeah.
And I'm getting ready to do part 2 in India this coming April.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah.
So how about you come on this coming Sunday and play a song about space and aliens on your banjo live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, well, let's do that then. So that'd be about 3 p.m. this coming Sunday.
All right.
And, the secret to this is, as you said, be consistent, be on every week, try and come up with a little piece of banjo each week, even if it's only like 30 seconds or it's a verse and a chorus.
Uh-huh.
And you will see a massive opening up within about 12 to 18 months.
Awesome. That sounds great. Yeah.
Okay then, Andy.
Well, where would you like people to find you, to follow you, that listen to this and want to find out more?
There's a members site for the Enigma channel, which is enigmachannel.com.
Okay.
And then there's the actual main site, which is enigmatv.com.
Okay, I'll link all that into the episode.
Yeah, and then they can also just go to ChristopherEverard.com as well.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I really appreciate you talking to me today, and I just I really respect and appreciate all the work you do, Chris. I think it's very important.
It's thank you very much, and I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, I got so much more I wanted to talk to you about, but I want you to get on with your evening there, and
well, we'll have a good chat on Sunday.
Awesome.
On my
Sounds
show.
Great.
All right then, Andy. You take care.
All right, take care of yourself, Chris. Talk to you soon.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the show. This episode has been brought to you by HypnoEarth. Anything is possible when you tap into the power of your subconscious mind. So check out HypnoEarth.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at HypnoEarth. And check out HypnoEarth on YouTube. As always, take care of yourself. Much love. Keep doing your thing out there. Tune in next time. We'll see you later. This is Andy Eversole. Peace.